Landlords in Los Angeles are taking self-defense classes to learn how to protect themselves from irate tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Los Angeles. Now, obviously, every week I see articles about landlords who've been attacked by tenants who are not happy about either paying the rent or being evicted, or maybe they just don't get along with their landlord, right? And I hate reading about this because sometimes they end in someone losing their life, and that's just an awful situation to even hear about, right? So in Los Angeles, landlords are actually taking self defense classes to learn how to protect themselves, hopefully de escalate, get out of that bad situation. And I agree with that. Okay. I'm a law enforcement officer myself. And you know what? I believe that people have the right to defend themselves. I believe that if you're in a place where you can get a concealed firearms permit, or if you don't need a concealed firearms permit and you're allowed to carry without one, that you should carry a firearm to protect yourself if you want to. Okay. So if you think about how dangerous a scenario it can be when dealing with somebody who might be losing their housing, or just doesn't have money, etc., to pay their rent, then you would want to have some form of protection on you, and sometimes your cell phone just isn't enough. Okay. But situational awareness helps as well. And I know a lot of landlords who are older people 50, 60, 70 years old. They go down to a house and they've got young tenants there, and the tenants think they can just easily take that person. So yeah, it's not always a good scenario. That's why I say, if you have to go out and do in-person rent collections, then take somebody with you if possible, or take some form of self-defense with you. Let people know where you're at. Try to do it in the daytime. Don't do it at nighttime. There's a lot of things, a lot of factors involved. And I personally think that, it can be very, very dangerous being a landlord in some situations. So, I had very good tenants. None of them ever gave me any sort of problem, right? But keep in mind that I also use property management on a lot of my lower income properties, like where I have my Section 8 tenants, right? So they're the ones who have to deal with a lot of the problems that I never will have to deal with. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you think it's a good idea for landlords to learn how to defend themselves? And what advice would you give to landlords in order to prevent themselves from becoming victims in this sort of situation? I'm just curious right now. I've never dealt with a tenant who has been mad at me before, right? I've dealt with a lot of angry people, believe me, right? But I believe in de-escalation and leaving, and two, I refuse to lower myself to their level and start yelling myself and let it get into my emotions. I'd rather just go through the legal process and evict the tenant, and pay, process servers or somebody else to serve the paperwork so that I don't even have to go there. But anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from usatoday.com, and it says, eviction protections gone. Landlords are learning to fight, literally. After suing to end eviction protections, the Los Angeles Property Owners Association offers landlords self-defense classes for when tenants attack. Good idea, okay? So let's get into the article and see what it says. If you Google tenant landlord murder, you'll see, Carrie Rios said. The former traffic cop pushes her tortoiseshell glasses up her nose and surveys her class of property managers and landlords who have so far failed to match her pep at 9 in the morning. The poster behind her commemorates a 1948 campaign against rent control. Freedom is everybody's business, it reads. So many cases, she said, grinning and shaking her head. That's why this class is so important. On a gray February day at the offices of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, 11 landlords and property managers have enrolled in a 2.5-hour self-defense class to protect themselves from irate tenants, transients, and the other hazards of life in the private housing business. The course teaches them how to stop life-threatening bleeding, maintain 360 degrees of awareness, take cover from bullets, and disarm shooters. Yeah, and I mean, that's all very important information. And they actually brought up a fact that I forgot about, which is, yeah, sometimes you have squatters and transients who will break into your property, when it's vacant. Some of them will use drugs. Some of them will have weapons on them. Some of them are facing mental illness or substance abuse problems, and you could be attacked by those people as well. Okay. So it is very important to be situationally aware. So, like, when I go to my property, I've had before where somebody has opened the door on one of my properties, maybe walked in and they didn't take anything, because the property was vacant at the time. So there wasn't much in there to take. But, once I walked in there, I felt very paranoid that maybe that person was still in the house, right? So if you go up to one of your houses, you notice that, hey, the window's broken, it looks like somebody's broken in, or the door has been kicked in or something like that, just assume that somebody is there. Don't just go up in there by yourself, because you could be confronting somebody who has broken in, and that could be a very dangerous situation. Founded in 1917, the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles is the premier association representing landlords and property managers in Los Angeles. Last year, it hired the Health and Safety Institute to teach its AVERT, Active Violence Emergency Response Training, self-defense course, because as landlords and property managers, we can be subject to verbal and or physical attacks by renters or tenant groups. The event description explains. Unfortunately, the media portrays us as evil. It also cites rising violent crime. And yeah, that is a very good point, right? The media, they literally come out and they portray us as evil for providing housing to people for the amount that they agreed to pay, and then demanding that they pay it. And that's not a good thing. Now, I will say that I have met, some smaller landlords who, they're a little bit different. They run their businesses a little bit different than I would. They're very rough and gruff and plain spoken, and that can irritate people. And you know what? That's why I say, you got to remove your personal emotions from the situation. And remember, this is a business, and don't get so emotionally involved in this that it leads to an escalation, that could be a conflict, and, where somebody could possibly be hurt. Especially us. In COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs, they lost their family, and the last thing they have is their house, Rios tells the group. You're taking the last thing they have. This is their worst day. I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to be prepared for that. When you go to evict, they're ready for you, she adds. We're afraid, agrees a mom and pop landlord who declined to give her name because she was worried about anti landlord bias. She and her husband tell the group they came to learn how to deal with homeless people and tenants who get a little crazed, and tenants who come after you with a video camera. You listen, don't even worry about tenants with the video camera. Cameras are everywhere now, right? You should have yours on as well. Okay, remember, this is your property. If you're doing everything according to the law and legally, they're the ones who are going to look like fools. Okay, and believe me, there's plenty of videos online. I've seen them posted by other landlords showing just how stupid these tenants look. They're living like trash. They're tearing places apart. They're doing everything wrong. And, I'm glad that landlords are recording this, because it exposes to the rest of the world what we already know, what we have seen. It also, when you have your camera out, it protects you and shows, the courts, hey, guess what? This is what I did. Everything I did was legal. What they're claiming I did was not true, and it did not happen that way. So yeah, you know what? That's why, even as a law enforcement officer, I've always been a big proponent of body worn cameras, right? Because I believe that the more documentation, the more recording, if you're doing everything right, the better. Anything with Lord is bad. Landlord, drug lord. The sessions were an immediate hit when they launched last year, successfully competing for space in a packed AAGLA calendar that also offers estate planning, Q&As with local politicians, and lectures on COVID-19 eviction protections with Dennis Block. A Los Angeles super lawyer once called the Henry Ford of evictions for his breathtaking efficiency processing cases. Today's turnout is paltry compared to that of previous sessions, which sold out at 30 attendees each, Rios explains. Until February 1st, landlords could not evict tenants in the city of Los Angeles who cite COVID 19 as the reason they could not pay rent. The resulting conflicts between tenants and landlords, in part, inspired AAGLA to host the classes, said Executive Director Dan Yuckelson, who also completed the training. LA County protections expire March 31st. AAGLA sued both the city and county over their eviction protections and regularly lobbied to end the so-called moratorium, though LA's courts continue to process thousands of evictions throughout the pandemic. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm glad that they sued, right? But in the end, it didn't end up making a difference. They let it expire when they let it expire. Their lawsuit didn't really go anywhere. Some landlords are out tens of thousands of dollars, and they had to deal with these irate, non-paying tenants who they couldn't evict. And you know what? I understand why there were so many conflicts going on. So yeah, landlords need to protect themselves. I'm glad that this property owners association is putting on this sort of training for the landlords, especially in a place like Los Angeles. This is a violent place, okay? There are some crazies living out there. There's crazies everywhere. So you know what? I think that this sort of training is necessary for landlords throughout the entire country.